You cannot imagine that a manager of any company will be given the same like a worker. You have high responsibility, then you will get the income more. Here, likewise, because the mother inherently, not just because of cultural tradition, has something inherent which makes the bond, the link greater between her and her child than the male. She receives a greater honor and respect from the child, and at the same time she is required to give greater obligation. So that in the Muslim world you'll find women and mothers basically, they choose to stay at home. They choose to stay. They can work, but they choose to stay at home to take care of their children. I only gave that as an example to show you that while Islam recognizes differences between the sexes, it does not accept the concept that gender is just an issue of upbringing or cultural traditions. For there are inherent differences for males and females. And as a result of that, the obligations and responsibility of each of the two sexes are together. Important from that is another matter, that even though men and women are different, they are not opposition like what we have said before. We don't have that battle of sexes in Islam. As it's sometimes said in the popular source designations, this does not exist in Islam. Men and women work in tandem. Just like day and night revolve. And you live in daytime and you live in night time. You cannot live only in night and you cannot live only in day. Likewise, men and women are not against one another. They are not pitted against one another. Yes.
I just wanted to announce that there will be a test for the fire alarm now. So don't get panicked. It's just a test and it will last for a minute. You don't need to leave. But the porter informed us that they are going to set it off now in a few minutes.
Quite a few times.
Sorry?
It will happen quite a few times.
Yeah, and it will be intermittent. What did you say, about the 5 minutes?
It will happen.
Yeah, okay. So any time now within the few coming minutes. But we are going to continue as usual. Yes, it will be very noisy actually. It will be just 1 minute.
You can carry on now till it starts.
I'll stop already. Yeah, we'll
carry
on now.
So we have said that these different roles that are allocated for men and women in Islam, these roles complement one another and are needed by one another in order for the success of humanity. Not in this world, but also in the hereafter, because Muslims, they believe of the hereafter, and this is the goal, the ultimate goal for Muslims. Now I would like to make the final comment, and then I will leave it open for questions. Let us look at the applicability of both of these programs. We discussed a lot of ideas, beliefs, but when it comes actually to the application, which of the 2 points is more successful? And I have a concrete example for you. In Beijing, 1995, the United Nations 4th World Conference of the Women, there was a proposal for action which was being discussed by the different nations and organizations. The aim of that proposal for action was how to uplift, appraise the status of women around the world, which are, of course, noble and correct aims. There is no contention concerning that. The platform for action was divided into different areas of concentration, such as poverty, health, finance, conflict, violence, and so forth. And one of them was about the girl child. The status of girls, future women in the world today. But the country hosting that conference, China, is known for the practice of killing girls. The reason why population. You can only have one child per couple, and Chinese by their tradition views males better than females, and so as a result they will usually kill the female child. You can't imagine that million yearly they kill in China. In Islam, this is slaughtering, murder. That's why in hope that the wife gives birth to a boy. The question is here, did the conference condemn that type of behavior? I would say no. And it's clear why. Because someone hosted this conference, you cannot say any word against them. And I found, in the internet you find, it's easy to find all the information about that conference in particular. So these conferences did nothing more than some suggestions that won't be applied. Taking you 1400 years ago, and this you will know that human beings are human beings. Whether they lived 2000 years ago or those who will come after us, we behave, we have the same manner, the same thinking. We can see from other things, one of the major issues which the United Nations was created for after the Second World War was the slaughter of many Jews in Europe. And yet, 50 years later, in the year of the 50th celebration of the United Nations, a genocide has taken place in Europe of Bosnians between 1992 to 1995. All the human rights, all the declarations in the last 50 years precedes the Bosnian crisis has not been able to change anything on the ground. Also, just 2-3 months ago, another Holocaust in Gaza. And no human rights, no United Nations whatsoever. When the Prophet Muhammad was sent to the Arabs had the same practice like Chinese now. The same. They used to kill their girl children. The Arabs killed their girls for a number of reasons. Most of the time due to poverty. Being a desert people, without industry or any sort of means of trade, existence was very minimal, and as a result, out of fear of poverty, they would kill their children, girl children. And they would bury them alive. This is in fact which is mentioned in Quran and was well known during the time of the Prophet Muhammad. God condemns in the Quran with verses the idea of killing a girl child, the burying of in the ground, and also the attitudes of the Arabs towards them. Until today, Muslims are reading these verses. For whenever any of them is giving the glad tidings, God mentioned and give it a glad tidings. To have a girl, it's a glad tidings. What happened to them? All their facial expressions changed. Darkened. What they are thinking to do? They are ashamed. How to get a child, girl child. It's better to bury. And then, oh, evil. Indeed is whatever they decide. Now within this condemnation of the practice of the people, and likewise the companions of the Prophet themselves, before they accept Islam, some of them, they did the same thing. And one of them is the second Khalifa of Islam, Umar. He killed and he buried his daughter before he accepted Islam. Within one generation, 23 years. This was how long the Prophet was amongst the Arabs. The practice of killing girls ended. It no longer existed in Arabia. And likewise, it did not just stop like that, but a change in activity